Episode 86. Once you become good, you become useless.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Hey friends, welcome to the very best podcast in the world, your only source in the universe for personal supremacy through health, wealth, and happiness. Well, I should rather say the cosmos, to extend it further and to include potential multiverses that are around that we don't know about yet. Interesting points to come and get to. Today's episode we're going to have to take a step back. Once you become good, you become useless. There are many applications to this. Well, I read it as a quote somewhere, but it has a certain amount of truth to it and doesn't really allow for a lot of interpretation at first glance. If you take a step back, it allows you to interpret a whole lot of stuff into it. And that's why we are covering it today. And we're not going to do so in 2 minutes. I hope that you were successful in Friday's exercise, putting together and trying to get rid of annihilating tasks that take 2 minutes or less to complete. And that, it's become, at least in parts, habitual to you in your life. That being said, let's dive into today's episode. Now, there's a point when you've mastered a skill or a profession. So, where do you go from there? Now, for me, this was, when my better half and I, when our paths crossed and we moved onto the farm, there's a lot of skills that you kind of have to learn, right? One of the most funny things was, back in my more or less active fire department days, we had a safety training and usage training on how to use a chainsaw. At that stage in my career, I was already a battalion chief, so I had people to do stuff for me. Now, out of courtesy and, it's a nice to have the certificate of this training, I took part and I watched, from a distance doing, leadership stuff with other leaders, talking bullshit, drinking coffee and Red Bull, and smoking cigarettes occasionally. I observed, as is my duty. And I got the certificate, never used it, never actually used a chainsaw. And why would I? As a consultant, you don't need to use a lot of chainsaws. So anyhow, comes the day that we need firewood, and we go out in the woods, and I am kind of pissed off because the chain constantly flies off the chainsaw. So we take it to the shop, and the shop guy is like, there's no oil in it. And I was like, what are you talking about? There's no oil in it. There's a gasoline oil mixture in it. Mixed it myself. And he's like, no, you're an idiot. You have to put oil into this separate chamber, and here's why. So he took me down the road of explaining to me, it was very, very courteous about, making me look like a complete jackass. But come to say, mastering a skill, is like, okay, I now know how to use a chainsaw. Where do I go from here? Now, from there, once you have mastered a skill, you can only gain experience and increase efficiency or effectiveness or whatever you want to call it with that skill. That's pretty much it. You can, but there's a downside to it. You become numb towards external influences because you know better. You've mastered the skill, you know how it works, and you've spent some time applying that skill, and seeing chances of of efficiency increase, kind of slips your eye because, you know how it works. You get a certain routine and that's it. The problem is that once you start applying that skill, and you get your routine, that things start to become dangerous, and we'll get into that in a moment. Now, at least when you're not actively and awarely challenging yourself to progress or excel in your field further, and maybe even publish those findings to change that skill and its application you're working in, then it's pretty much difficult to progress from there. So, for yourself, the continuation of that profession will lead inevitably to discomfort, right? Because you're stuck in a situation. You'll only act on experience and not out of curiosity, right? And so things become monotonous. You become, discomfortable. Is there such a word? I don't know. And it makes having fun in what you're doing difficult, at least. It'll become dissatisfying. That's the word I was looking for. So you will become also, and that's what I mentioned earlier, prone to errors in your work because your attention towards the work will reduce because you're doing it by heart. You're operating a machine and, nothing's ever happened before because, hey, you've mastered how to work the chainsaw. So what can possibly go wrong? And generally, you're right. Because you've done it 100,000 times, you don't wear your personal safety equipment. And because the chainsaw never fucking slips off a tree that you're currently working on and hits you in the leg and leads to severe injuries and amputated legs, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, right? And that's where things kind of become dangerous. And there's more than one downside to that, actually. Because it is so repetitive and because you are so experienced in performing that skill, you will inevitably start to feel like time is flying by you, right? You hardly notice the work you're doing. There's a similarity, muscle buildup in the regions that you work with, or muscle memory as it's called in a different context sometimes. But it also is a pretty applicable term for this situation. While other parts of your body start to decay faster. You know what I'm getting at, right? So let's say you're, I don't know, there's a stupid cartoon that comes to mind where you've got this spear thrower or javelin thrower, I think is the more accurate term, which, he's got this tremendous biceps on his right side, on his right arm. And on his left arm, it's like, non-existent because he just trains his right arm to throw the javelin or the spear. And, anyhow, long story short, we made an episode about the time flying by. So you might want to listen into that. There's actually a very scientific and easy to understand description why that is the case. I don't want to bother you with that now. And as for the muscle memory bit, I'm actually planning an episode for that, but I'm trying to get more qualified medical sources on how muscle memory actually really works. it's training and training and training usually, or in this case, working and doing the same thing always. In that sense, my promise to be kept, being under 10 minutes. Okay, I pulled that one. But we're slightly above 10 minutes. So in that sense, if you have somebody that's very good at what they're doing, send them a link to this episode, because sometimes change in lifestyle is in order. It's going to have very many positive impacts. Number one, because you are getting a new skill, it's going to make your life seem longer, or your days seem longer, while you're, kind of adopting that skill. The muscle memory bit, like I said, I'm on it. It'll be in an episode later on. And subscribe to this podcast, because we are publishing a new episode pretty much every day. No, actually every day, Monday to Friday, noon GMT. And have a successful day. And if you've had your successful day already, have a good night. And we'll be in touch tomorrow with yet another episode. Peace out, guys.